All right, before we move on, we got to acknowledge the fact did a little new set, set change, wardrobe change, so to speak, for the set. Hopefully it gives you a better, more relaxed, chilled environment.
Relaxed, you know what I'm saying? Kick your feet up and everything, show our kicks and everything, you know what I'm saying?
So continuing our conversation, let's move down to Oxford. It's officially game week. The Ole Miss Rebels take on Georgia State Saturday at 6:45.
And now this will be their first meeting ever between the Rebels and Georgia State. The Panthers, Ruben, finished 3-9 last season, but they did get a big upset win over another SEC opponent, Vanderbilt.
And Vanderbilt's no slouch. They had some big wins last year. Either way, the Rebels are ready to go with head coach Lane Kiffin starting this season with a fresh face at quarterback. Seems like we're saying that all the time. This one is Austin Simmons, though.
And now joining us on the program, another friend of the program. He is the host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, which you can catch right here on the 24 Plus app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Mr. Stephen Willis.
We should have done a round of applause.
There we go. Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah,
I got you, Stephen. I got you.
You gotta pump it up. That's our bad, Stephen. We were not prepared for the pump up action we need. We needed to get that more revved up. But I don't think we have to get you revved up. It's game week. You're probably finally ready to go.
Man, this has been the longest offseason ever. I mean, if you look at the lineup that ABC 24 has set up for Saturday, my goodness. And if you could do a multi-view, it's going to be fantastic. And it feels like we have earned this moment, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. We got a day full of great games that are going to keep you engaged all day long. But let's get started with Ole Miss. There are a lot of people that want to know, can they move forward now that Jackson Dart is gone?
The big question right there.
I think they can. I think that Austin Simmons has the potential to be the most talented quarterback that has been at Ole Miss since Eli Manning was there. Now, potential has to be realized, but he is a 6'5" quarterback, runs about a 4.5 40, has a laser rocket arm, as they used to joke about on SNL and all of that. He has all of the tools that you're looking for, but the difference is Jackson Dart was a third-year quarterback. So how quickly will Austin Simmons assimilate to what is going on and kind of get to where he's moving the offense pretty smooth? I like him to have a fairly big game against Georgia State, but if you look at his other first, like the, quote, spring game they had a couple of years ago, his debut, he struggled in that one. The first scrimmage this year, he struggled a little bit in that. So I would not be surprised if this is a middling to above average type performance. I'm not expecting something like Eli Manning did in 2001 where he completed like 18 straight passes. But Austin Simmons, he is going to be a fantastic quarterback if he just plays with himself.
Now, a lot has been made of the quarterback, the change at quarterback, but now I think something that's not talked enough about is the change at wideout. Obviously, Trey Harris was the man last year. Now, Caden Lee is going to get his first shot at being the man. Tell me what you kind of think about the wide receiver core.
Listen, this wide receiver unit, seriously, it's all new names, all new faces, and all of that. But as a room, this is the best wide receiver room that Lane Kiffin has had at Ole Miss. Now, there is no Trey Harris.
Okay.
There isn't that elite guy like Trey Harris. But Deshaun Stribling, he nearly had 1,000 yards for like the quarterback challenged Oklahoma State team last year. You have Caden Lee, who had nearly 1,000 yards at Ole Miss. You have Harrison Wallace, who was the leading wide receiver for Penn State. Now, they had that super all-world tight end, but at wide receiver, he was the leading guy. And then the second, Deuce Alexander, Isaiah Hartrung, Trayvon Ray, the transfers that got brought in, they can literally go 9 or 10 deep if they choose to do that. Now, there's not an elite person in that room. There's not a Trey Harris in this room, but there's a bunch of just below Trey Harris's in this room.
And just below, you're still pretty dang good at that point.
Yeah.
So let's talk specifically about this first game, right? What can people expect? What are you expecting to see in this? Obviously, most football people are not expecting an overly competitive game, just based on the level of player in both programs and the tradition that Ole Miss is going to bring into this. But what are you expecting to see realistically in this first game? Defensive domination or the offense getting on a roll? What are you thinking?
Well, the best part of this Ole Miss football team, believe it or not, I know that Ole Miss had 4 players drafted in the NFL, but is the front 7. Pete Golding has said multiple times during this offseason he's not expecting much of a drop-off. Now, that sounds absolutely weird when you have a Walter Nolan, a Princely Amon Mielon, and those guys graduating, but these are like 4- and 5-star players too deep on the defensive line as they have right now. Cam Franklin, a former player of the year in the state of Mississippi from Lake Cormorant. Sontaran Perkins is coming back. He's the returning leader in the sacks in the SEC. And then you have Jam Brown and William Eccles. William Eccles was also a #1 player in the state of Mississippi, flanked by, right there, by Xavion Harris, who has had an all-SEC level camp. I want to see what this looks like because Georgia State, their offensive coordinator is Hugh Jackson. They're going to run some NFL schemes. They're going to scheme it up correctly. They have Rashad Amos. They have Jordan Simmons, 2 players that played at Ole Miss. They've got Branson Robinson, who transferred from Georgia. They've got some dudes. They're going to try to run the ball. The best part of the Ole Miss team might be the front 7. That is the area that I'm going to look at in this ballgame because if Ole Miss can shut down the run, this game's going to get over early.
Now, we heard Lane Kiffin talk about the injuries in the offseason. Does that give you any type of worry going into the season if that could be a lingering effect? Or you think the recruiting and hitting the portal that he has the depth to address anything that may happen early on this season?
This week, not so much, but next week is at Kentucky, and the week after that is Arkansas at home. This week they've gotten 4 out of the 5 people that you would have said, hey, that one's going to be a starter back. But they need to develop some continuity on the offensive line. The offensive line is a very continuity-based unit. And because of that, I'm expecting them, even if the game gets a little bit out of hand, it's going to look like Lane is running up the score. This offensive line needs reps together. So I'm expecting the starters to stay in a little bit longer than they would have otherwise because of those injuries. Now, Dalen O'Townsend, the transfer from UAB, and Terez Davis, the transfer from Maryland, they look like they're still on the shelf a little bit. When they come back, they're going to get a lot of healthy. But Patrick Kutas from Memphis in the line, the 2 tackles are very good, Diego Pounds and Jaden Williams. And Bryson Sanders from Chattanooga going to come in and kind of be that first 4. It became that left guard position that was the problem area that they were looking at. It looks like it's going to be P.J. Wilkins, the transfer from Charlotte, who a lot of people had him as like the 6th offensive lineman earlier in the fall. But now they just need to build continuity. I'm not worried about talent necessarily. I'm worried about learning the ins and outs before you get into SEC play because last year Ole Miss played 4 cupcakes for whatever it was worth. They played Kentucky, and they kind of got hit in the mouth. Kentucky physicaled them a little bit. So they need to get over that hump really quick against Georgia. It's going to be important that they start really, really fast and become more of a finished product because at Kentucky and at playing against Arkansas is coming up next.
And I know we got to let you go, but do you think you can get that toughness test that you need early against Georgia State? I mean, you're talking about – like Ole Miss's defense averages something like they gave up something like 400 total points or yards or some crap like that on the year. I mean, they were dominant on Ole Miss, whereas Georgia State gave up a ton of points to their opponents last year. So I think Ole Miss gave up less than 200 points total, and Georgia State gave up something like 400 points. So will that toughness test be able to be had in this first game, do you think?
I think they tried to do that during fall camp whenever they were going through training camp. They were trying to do good versus good out in the Mississippi heat during the hot weather. They tried to get the toughness there. The Georgia State game's about execution. It's about knowing exactly what to do, not having bust in MAs. If you're able to do that, they're going to handle the toughness and win that game as it is. I think the toughness for Kentucky got built a couple of weeks ago a little bit. But they need to make sure the continuity is there because the reality is against Kentucky last year, Ole Miss couldn't run the football. And if Ole Miss could have ran the football, they'd have been in the playoffs. And it's just as simple as that.
Yeah. Stephen, we appreciate your time. You have more knowledge than you have forgotten more about Ole Miss football than I've probably ever known in my life.
Hey, I just enjoy talking about Ole Miss football. I can literally sit here and do this all day. I appreciate everything that everybody's doing, and everybody watching at home, check it out. The ABC lineup on Saturday is legit.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in just a moment, Stephen. I'm going to be down there this Saturday, and, I'm very happy that college football is back. Yeah. But I got to be honest, we know week one is just going to be a bunch of blowouts. And the thing that we can always talk about with SEC football is you're probably going to see a lot of 50-0s or 50-12 or 63-9. And so, but I'm excited to be back out at Vaught Hemingway Stadium.
Yep. Stephen, we're going to let you go. Brother, you have a great rest of your day. We appreciate your time. And everybody, make sure you checked out the Locked On sport podcasts and shows. Just find Stephen wherever he's at. Exactly. You're going to get all the information you need. Thanks again for
Number one Ole Miss podcast.